Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for November the 28th. Today, we are beginning our final read through these last three texts of the Old Testament that really all go together, or through the Old Testament history text, I should say. Ezra and Nehemiah actually were joined into one writing originally, but we divide them up into Ezra and Nehemiah, and then Esther also tells us about some events that took place during the exile time period of Israel and Judah. So these three texts do go together pretty well as they give us some details about things that happened during the exile. That's Esther's portion. And then what's happening once the people get back from the exile in Ezra and Nehemiah. So we've read all about from the beginning through the end of Judah and Israel being in the promised land before they were taken away in captivity, Israel taken away by the Assyrians, and then Judah taken away by the Babylonians. And now we're going to see what is going to be the beginning stages of their restoration back to the land. We actually read that in our read on Sunday at the end of Second Chronicles chapter 36 and verses 22 through 23, which says that in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of Yahweh spoken through Jeremiah, Yahweh roused the spirit of King Cyrus of Persia to issue a proclamation throughout his entire kingdom and also to put it in writing. This is what King Cyrus of Persia says: Yahweh, the God of the heavens, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build him a temple in Jerusalem in Judah, or at Jerusalem in Judah. Any of his people among you may go up, and may Yahweh his God be with him. So we are looking forward at the end of Chronicles to the restoration of God's people. And in fact, that's exactly where the text of Ezra is going to pick up. So let's go ahead and talk and read that first chapter, and then we'll come back and do some additional introductory remarks about these texts of Ezra and Nehemiah. So reading here in Ezra chapter 1 and verse number 1. Ezra chapter 1 and verse number 1, in the first year. This is going to sound really familiar, so hopefully nobody catches any major deja vu, but in the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, in order to fulfill the word of Yahweh spoken through Jeremiah, Yahweh roused the spirit of King Cyrus to issue a proclamation throughout his entire kingdom and to put it in writing. This is what King Cyrus of Persia says: Yahweh, the God of the heavens, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build him a house at Jerusalem in Judah. Any of his people among you, may his God be with him, and may he go to Jerusalem in Judah and build the house of Yahweh, the God of Israel, the God who is in Jerusalem. Let every survivor, wherever he resides, be assisted by the men of that region with silver, gold, goods, and livestock, along with a free will offering for the house of God in Jerusalem. So the family heads of Judah and Benjamin, along with the priests and Levites, everyone whose spirit God had roused, prepared to go up and rebuild Yahweh's house in Jerusalem. All their neighbors supported them with silver articles, gold, goods, livestock, and valuables, in addition to all that was given as a freewill offering. King Cyrus also brought out the articles of Yahweh's house that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from Jerusalem and had placed in the house of his gods. King Cyrus of Persia had them brought out under the supervision of Mithridath, the treasurer, who counted them out to Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. This was the inventory: 30 gold basins, 1,000 silver basins, 29 silver knives, 30 gold bowls, 410 various silver bowls, and 1,000 other articles. The gold and silver articles totaled 5,400, and Sheshbazzar brought all of them when the exiles went up from Babylon to Jerusalem. That is Ezra chapter 1. And again, it's not deja vu. It really does pick up right where Second Chronicles left off, which probably gives us an indication, or possibly, we'll say that possibly, and it's very plausible, that the writer of the Chronicles was also the writer of Ezra and Nehemiah. Some suggest that Ezra is the author of Chronicles and Ezra and Nehemiah, and that is quite possible that could be the case, because remember, all this is being written after these events have taken place, again, chronicling everything that has taken place about God's restoration of his people in Judah and in Israel, I guess, really known as Israel at this time, since the separation designation is probably gone at this point, because what was left in Judah also included some of the remnants of the northern tribes of Israel left over. So really, we are referring to Israel again at this point. Remember, Babylon has come in. Babylon has destroyed Jerusalem. Ezra and Nehemiah then are going to be two of the individuals who are going to do a great deal of the refurbishing of Israel, but not just them. Also, Zerubbabel is a big deal. Really, what's taking place here in Ezra chapter 1 is all of this is about 80 years before Ezra actually arrives in Jerusalem, because he's not the first one that ends up going back to Jerusalem, but Zerubbabel actually ends up going back to Jerusalem first. Chapters 1 through 6 of Ezra talk about Zerubbabel, and he is going to focus on the temple and its restoration. About 60 years later, 60, 70, I guess 60, 80 years later, Ezra is going to come, and that's going to be Ezra chapters 9 through 10. He is going to arrive in Judah, and he's going to focus on following the Torah and unifying and establishing the community. And then in Nehemiah chapters 1 through 7, we're going to see him focusing on the city walls. And really what we're talking about here is just a great deal of restoration. This is the story of God restoring his people back to their land after their years of exile. Again, they went in exile on honest terms, meaning that God just didn't forget them for no good reason. God didn't fail to protect them. No, God sent them there because they were guilty. They had been sinful. They had rejected the covenant. They had been disloyal to the covenant, and that had been a generational thing. And after those who were faithful were gone, God took the unfaithful ones, punished them through captivity, and sent them first to Babylon, and then the Persians end up overtaking Babylon. And really one of the things that worked out well in this is the fact that Cyrus actually had a habit of allowing those who had been conquered to return back to their land and to establish themselves once again. Now, that does not mean, though, that this is a made-up thing, that God aroused his spirit. I certainly believe that God aroused his spirit. And in fact, we have prophecy, the foretelling of Cyrus many, many years, decades prior to his coming onto the scene. Him by name, he is mentioned as being the one who is going to allow Israel to come back to their land. So although this was something that Cyrus had a habit of doing, we know that God was 100% at work in it, and he certainly did rouse him to be able to allow him to go back, to allow the people of Judah and Israel to go back to their promised land. This is fulfilling the prophecy of Jeremiah 25 and also Jeremiah chapter 29. So with this return, there are some points of hope that really are reignited within the hearts of the people of Israel. Number one, that they still wait for the Messianic King. This is something they were looking for, the great son of David who would bless Israel and bless the world. We can read about that in Isaiah 11 and also Hosea chapter 2. We're also thinking about they're looking forward to God's presence in the new temple, which, if you think about it, they're probably thinking in very literal terms. But again, I believe that is going to be fulfilled in the church, that we are the temple of God, whose presence is with us through Jesus and his Spirit. So that's from Ezekiel 40 through 48 and also Zechariah chapter 2. And then they're also looking forward to God's kingdom now ruling over the nations. Isaiah 2 and Zechariah chapter 8 are references for that too. So with them returning back to the promised land, these points of hope that maybe at some point in exile were just barely smoldering to embers, they are now being stoked, and the flames are building up because they recognize this is something that God is certainly going to do. And maybe now, with the restoration of Israel, these things will take place. What we have here as well in chapter 1 are some echoes of the Exodus, I believe. There's some echoes of the Exodus. One of those echoes is the fact that all the neighbors are going to help support Israel in their journey back. Cyrus says in verse number 4 that let every survivor wherever he resides be assisted by the men of that region with silver, golds, goods, and livestock, along with a free will offering for the house of God in Judah. That was something that took place in the Exodus, in Exodus chapter 12 and verse 35. Remember, whenever the people of Israel were leaving out of Egypt, they were given a great deal of treasures by the Egyptians who were there. That takes place here too. Now, that could be that those who helped them were some of their Jewish neighbors that were not going to return to Jerusalem. Remember, not everybody returned. Any of his people among you, may his God be with him, and may he go to Jerusalem in Judah and build the house of Yahweh, the God of Israel, the God who is in Jerusalem. They could go. He's not forcing them to, but he's allowing them to. So some people might have stayed behind. But this certainly, I think, as well, would be some of the Persians were helping them in their journey back by assisting them with the various treasures and stuff that was necessary. But one of the most important things that Cyrus allowed for them to do is take back the articles that belonged to Yahweh's temple. Remember, they had been taken away by Nebuchadnezzar and other men throughout the years whenever Israel was invaded because of unfaithfulness. So whatever they had accumulated in Persia, Cyrus is now giving back to the people so that they can take it back to Judah and it can be a part of their restoration process. This was given to Sheshbazzar. He's referred to as the Prince of Judah, but many people are not convinced that this necessarily means he is royal blood, but more so that he could have just been one of the leaders of the Jewish people at that time. And so with all of this, they have all these things. Sheshbazzar then brings them and the exiles. They go up from Babylon and they go to Jerusalem. And we're going to see in chapter 2 tomorrow where they're going to begin, where we're going to have a list of those who did return from Persia, and then some more of the gifts of the work are going to be talked about there. So we'll talk about that tomorrow here in Ezra chapter 2. If you have any if you have questions about this text of Ezra, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And if you want to do a little additional study on Ezra, you can always look up the Bible Project's videos. I really love their Bible illustration videos that they do, just giving a summation of the various biblical texts. If you go to YouTube and you search the Bible Project, along with Ezra or Nehemiah, and that'll pop up. I think it's about an 8.5-minute video. It's really good. Gives you just a lot of the details, kind of lays out the structure of the text. I got some of that from some of what I said today, actually, from them. Again, just they do a really good job of breaking down the text and explaining some of the structural elements of it. So if you want to do any additional listening or reading on that, you can find that on YouTube, the Bible Project. Search Ezra along with that. But thanks so much for reading along with me today on this Tuesday. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. May God bless you in all that you do, and I hope you'll be back again tomorrow as we read yet another sort of genealogy. We'll just be reading about the descendants of these various people. There are a whole bunch of numbers along with them as well. Really look to be a captivating read tomorrow, but it is really leading us up to what is going to be some of the cooler readings that we have here in the Old Testament. Just reading through the saga of restoration, some of the problems that the people face, and in fact, there is a pretty set structure whenever it comes to these three sections of Ezra and Nehemiah. Remember, they were both together in one scroll originally, but with Ezra and with Zerubbabel's part, Ezra 1 through 6, you have, again, this pattern of the Persian king sending the people to Jerusalem, and then you have within that the leaders facing opposition, and then you have kind of a strange anticlimactical end. Same thing with Ezra's portion. He's sent back, faces opposition, has kind of a weird ending. Same thing with Nehemiah. He's sent back. He faces opposition and has a bit of a weird ending as well. So there's just a lot going on within this text. But again, that follows a pretty good pattern throughout, seeing each of these sections having kind of these three different scenes that play out in each of them. So looking forward to reading that with you here over the next few weeks. Again, thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Hope to see you tomorrow as we read together from Ezra chapter 2. Take care and God bless.